My sister is a single mother, Natalie said into the microphone, her voice sweet, polished, practiced. Unwanted by anyone. For half a second, the room didn't react. Then laughter rippled across the ballroom. Not awkward laughter. Not shocked laughter. Real laughter. The kind that lands heavy in your chest when you realize you're the joke. I felt it before I fully understood it. That hollow drop in my stomach, that buzzing in my ears. 200 faces turned toward me at once. Some curious, some amused, some already looking away, relieved it wasn't them. I was Elena, the older sister, the one nobody ever defended. I was seated near the back, exactly where I'd been placed. My hands were folded in my lap, knuckles white, nails pressing crescents into my skin. I didn't move. I couldn't. My heels felt glued to the floor. My throat refused to open. My sister smiled wider, encouraged by the reaction. She thrived on rooms like this. She always had. She tried marriage, Natalie continued, tilting her head like she was sharing an inside joke. It didn't work out. And now, well, she comes with baggage. More laughter. Louder this time. I felt my mother Margaret lean forward at her table. I knew what was coming before she opened her mouth. She'd always needed to add the final cut. Always needed to win. She's a used product, my mom called out loud and clear. The room exploded. Applause. Chuckles. Whispers layered on top of each other like static. Someone clinked a glass. Someone whistled. My father Robert didn't say a word. He just covered his mouth, shoulders shaking, eyes lowered, pretending restraint while enjoying every second. I stared straight ahead, my vision blurring, my heartbeat thudding so hard it felt like it might shake the chair beneath me. Then I felt a small hand tighten around mine. Me? Noah whispered beside me. I looked down. My child was staring up at me, eyes wide, confused, trying to understand why a room full of adults was laughing at their mother. Before I could answer, before I could stand or disappear or break, a chair scraped loudly against the floor. The groom, Andrew, stood up. He didn't smile. He didn't look at my sister. He walked straight to the microphone and took it from her hand. And suddenly, the entire room went silent. What he said next would expose everything they thought they could hide. Before we continue, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it there? Drop it in the comments. I read them all. And if you've ever been in a room where people laughed at you, not with you. If you've ever stayed silent just to survive, make sure you're subscribed because this story isn't what it looks like on the surface. Now let me take you back, not to the wedding, but to the beginning. Before that night, before the chandeliers and the laughter and the way my name became a punchline, I was just Elena. I'm 32 years old. I work 2 jobs. I wake up before sunrise and fall into bed long after my son is asleep. I pack lunches, sign permission slips, stretch groceries, and pretend exhaustion is just another personality trait. I don't complain because complaining never changed anything in my family. In our house growing up, there were 2 daughters. Natalie was the bright one, the effortless one, the one people noticed when she entered a room. Teachers remembered her name. Relatives leaned in when she spoke. My parents orbited her like gravity. And then there was me, the reliable one, the "you're strong, you'll be fine" one, the daughter who didn't need praise because she didn't ask for it, the one who learned early that silence earned approval faster than honesty ever could. When Natalie cried, my mother rushed. When I struggled, my father shrugged. She'll figure it out, he used to say. So I did. I figured out how to survive disappointment, how to make myself smaller, how to swallow hurt and call it maturity. Even when my marriage collapsed, even when I became a single mother overnight, even when I showed up to family gatherings already tired, already braced. By the time my sister announced her engagement, I had perfected the art of being invisible. I didn't know then that invisibility wouldn't be enough, because some families don't stop at ignoring you. Sometimes, they need an audience. And that's when everything I thought I understood began to unravel. In my family, nothing was ever said out loud, but everything was understood. Natalie was the miracle, the child my parents loved to show off. From the time she was little, people called her special, and my parents believed it like a prophecy. Every report card, every performance, every small achievement was treated like proof that she was destined for more. I was older, but I learned quickly that being first didn't mean being favored. When Natalie wanted piano lessons, my mother rearranged her schedule. When I asked for help with school fees, my father sighed and said, "You'll manage." I did manage. I always managed. At family dinners, Natalie talked, and everyone listened. I cleared plates without being asked. At holidays, her gifts were wrapped in satin ribbons while mine came with explanations. "We didn't know what to get you," my mom would say, like that was my fault. I told myself it wasn't personal, that this was just how families worked. Someone shines. Someone supports. What I didn't realize back then was that support in our house didn't come with respect. By the time we were adults, the roles were locked in place. Natalie was celebrated. I was expected. If something went wrong, I was supposed to adjust. If something went right, she was supposed to be praised. Even when I became a mother, the pattern didn't change. My struggles were inconvenient. My resilience was taken for granted. And every time I swallowed the hurt, they learned something dangerous. They learned I would stay quiet. They learned I wouldn't push back. They learned I could be used. What happened at that wedding wasn't sudden. It was the result of years of practice. By the time Natalie started planning her wedding, my role was already decided. I wasn't asked what I thought. I was informed what I would do. Help with invitations. Pick up relatives from the airport. Watch the kids during fittings. Run errands because I was better at handling things. I said yes to all of it. Not because I wanted to, because saying no had never gone well for me. When I showed up tired, my mother frowned. "You should be grateful you're included," she'd say, like inclusion was a gift, not a given. When I mentioned money was tight, my father waved it off. "You're practical. You'll figure it out." Natalie never figured anything out. Things were figured out for her. She had opinions about my clothes. "Don't wear anything too bold. This isn't your moment." Opinions about my son. "Kids get fussy. Try to keep him quiet." Opinions about where I'd sit. "Closer to the back makes sense, just in case." Every sentence was delivered sweetly, reasonably, like I was the one being difficult for feeling hurt. I noticed how people looked past me during wedding events, how conversations shifted when Natalie entered the room, how my presence felt tolerated, not wanted. Still, I stayed, because that's what I'd always done. I told myself it was temporary, that once the wedding was over, things would calm down, that families say careless things when they're stressed. What I didn't understand was this: stress doesn't create cruelty, it reveals it. And the wedding didn't bring out something new in my family. It gave them a stage they'd been waiting for longer than I realized. The morning of the wedding, I stood in front of the mirror longer than I needed to, not fixing my hair, not adjusting my dress, just staring at myself, trying to figure out why my chest felt so tight. I wore something simple, neutral, forgettable, exactly what Natalie had suggested. I didn't want attention. I just wanted the day to pass without incident. My son Noah was excited. He kept asking if there would be cake, if there would be music, if he could dance. I smiled and said yes to all of it, even though something in me felt off. When we arrived at the venue, my mother barely looked at me. "Table's already set," she said. "You're near the back." Of course I was. Noah tugged my hand as we walked past crystal centerpieces and people in tailored suits. "Mommy, it's really big," he whispered. "It is," I said. "Stay close to me." The ceremony itself was beautiful. Perfect, even. Natalie glowed. People cried. Cameras flashed. Applause followed every scripted moment. And I almost relaxed. Almost. Then I noticed something small. Natalie glancing at my mother during the reception. My mother nodding back. My father leaning in to whisper something, all three of them smiling. Not nervous smiles. Anticipating smiles. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a slip. This wasn't stress. This wasn't a joke that went too far. Whatever was coming had been discussed, planned, rehearsed. I looked down at Noah, happily swinging his feet under the table unaware, and a strange thought crossed my mind, not fear, not anger, but clarity. If they were willing to humiliate me in front of him, there was nothing left for me to protect by staying quiet. And then Natalie stood up, took the microphone, and proved me right. Because the moment she spoke my name, I understood this wasn't about embarrassment, it was about erasing me. The sound came in waves. Not all at once, that would have been merciful, but staggered. One laugh, then another, then a ripple that rolled through the room like permission being granted. Permission to mock, permission to judge, permission to enjoy my pain. I stayed seated. Every instinct screamed at me to stand, to grab my son, to leave, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I felt frozen, like if I moved, something inside me would shatter completely. Natalie kept going. She paced slightly, comfortable, practiced, feeding off the energy. I mean, I love my sister, she said, pausing for effect. But let's be honest. Some people are cautionary tales. More laughter. My mother laughed this time too. Not loudly, not openly, just enough to be seen, to be counted. My father didn't stop her. He never stopped anything. I remember thinking how strange it was that the room looked so beautiful. Candlelight, white linens, glasses catching the light. It didn't match what was happening inside my chest. Noah shifted beside me. I felt him lean closer, his head brushing my arm. "Mommy, did you do something bad?" he whispered. That's when the laughter stopped being noise. It became damage. I wanted to tell him no. I wanted to tell him this had nothing to do with him, with us. But my mouth wouldn't form the words fast enough, and the room was still laughing. That was when I noticed him. The groom. Andrew hadn't laughed. Not once. He was sitting very still, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on me, not with pity, not with confusion, but with something sharper. Recognition. I didn't know then what it meant. I only knew that when the laughter finally began to fade, a chair scraped loudly against the floor. And Andrew stood up. And that was the first time all night that the room didn't feel like it belonged to my family anymore. The sound of the chair scraping back cut through the noise like a blade. Every laugh stumbled to a stop. Andrew stood slowly, deliberately, as if he needed everyone to understand this wasn't impulse. This was a decision. He didn't look at Natalie. He didn't look at my parents. His eyes came straight to me, then down to Noah, still pressed against my side. The room held its breath. Andrew walked to the microphone and took it from my sister's hands. Not roughly, not angrily, just final, like removing something dangerous before more damage could be done. "This isn't funny," he said. His voice wasn't loud. That was what made it worse. A nervous shuffle moved through the guests. Someone cleared their throat. My mother stiffened. Natalie's smile faltered for the first time all night. Andrew continued, "I've spent 2 years getting to know this family, watching how things work, who gets celebrated, who gets ignored." He turned slightly, gesturing toward me. "And I've watched Elena be treated like she's invisible. Tonight was just the first time it was done out loud." My father stood halfway, then sat back down. "I'm a lawyer," Andrew said calmly. "I work with families in crisis, with children who learn early what cruelty looks like when adults call it jokes." His gaze dropped to Noah again. That child just watched his mother be humiliated by people who are supposed to protect her. The silence was suffocating now. Natalie tried to laugh it off. "Andrew, stop. You're making this awkward." "No," he said. "You did." He inhaled once, steadying himself. "I will not marry into a family that teaches cruelty as entertainment." Gasps. Sharp. Uncontrolled. Andrew set the microphone down. "I'm leaving." And just like that, the wedding stopped being a celebration. But what happened after he walked away was even harder to survive. The silence didn't last long. It never does. The first sound wasn't crying. It wasn't shouting. It was my mother's voice, sharp, panicked, searching for control. "What did you say to him?" she demanded, already turning toward me. Heads snapped in my direction. Just like that, the room needed a new villain, and I was familiar in that role. Natalie's face crumpled, mascara streaking as she grabbed my father's arm. "She's always been jealous," she sobbed. "She couldn't stand seeing me happy." My father nodded slowly, like the conclusion made sense. You've always had a way of poisoning people against us, he said, his disappointment practiced, effortless. I didn't answer. I was too busy holding Noah, who had started shaking. His small arms wrapped around my neck, his face buried against my shoulder like he was trying to disappear. Around us, guests whispered. The narrative rewrote itself in real time. Poor Natalie. What a horrible sister. She ruined her own family's moment. I saw people who had laughed minutes earlier now shaking their heads at me. Some with sympathy, some with judgment, most with relief that the spotlight had moved. My mother stepped closer. You owe your sister an apology, she hissed. Right now, something inside me finally settled. Not anger, not sadness, certainty. I didn't owe anyone in that room anything. I adjusted Noah on my hips, stood up slowly, and for the first time that night I spoke. I didn't say a word to Andrew, I said calmly. He saw you. That's all it took. No one responded, so I turned and walked away, past the tables, past the flowers, past the family that had already decided who I was. Behind me, the wedding unraveled. Ahead of me, something unfamiliar waited. And it wasn't revenge, it was freedom. I didn't run. That surprised me. I walked out of the ballroom at the same pace I'd walked into it, my heels steady, my back straight, my son breathing unevenly against my shoulder. Each step felt unreal, like I was watching myself from a distance. No one stopped me. Not my mother, not my father, not my sister. They were too busy salvaging what they could. Apologies, explanations. Damage control whispered between clenched teeth. Outside, the night air hit my face, and I finally breathed. Noah's grip loosened a little. Are we in trouble? He asked softly. No, I said. And for the first time in my life, I didn't hesitate. We're safe. The next days were quiet. Too quiet. My phone lit up with missed calls and messages I didn't open. Accusations. Please. Rewritten histories. I already knew how the story would go if I answered. So I didn't. I took time off work. I slept. I cooked real meals. I sat on the floor and played with my son like the world hadn't just cracked open. People reached out, cousins, an aunt I barely knew, friends who'd been there that night and finally saw what I'd never been able to explain. I didn't realize, they said. I'm sorry, they admitted. That mattered more than I expected. Andrew emailed once. A simple message. You didn't deserve that. I hope you know that. I didn't know it now. The wedding photos went up online weeks later. Smiles frozen in time. A perfect day captured just before it collapsed. I wasn't in any of them. And for the first time, that didn't hurt, because I wasn't erased. I had finally stepped out of a story where I was only useful as a punchline. And I was about to start one where I didn't have to disappear to survive. I used to think strength meant endurance, keeping your head down, taking the joke, staying quiet so things wouldn't get worse. That night taught me how wrong I was. Strength isn't surviving humiliation. Strength is recognizing when love has conditions you should never accept. My family still exists. They always will. But the version of me that stayed silent for their comfort doesn't. She didn't make it out of that ballroom, and I'm grateful for that. I didn't get an apology. Not a real one. I got explanations. Excuses. Anger dressed up as concern. I learned quickly that accountability feels like betrayal to people who benefit from your silence. And that's okay. My son sleeps peacefully now. He laughs easily. He doesn't ask why people are laughing at me anymore. One day, if he asks about that wedding, I won't tell him about the cruelty. I'll tell him about the moment I chose him over approval. About the moment I stood up without raising my voice. About the night I learned that walking away is not losing. It's choosing yourself. If you're listening to this and you've ever been the reliable one, the invisible one, the one everyone leans on but never defends, hear me clearly. You are not too sensitive. You are not difficult. You are not a burden. You were just in a room where cruelty had an audience. And you are allowed to leave. If this story spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've ever had to choose yourself when no one clapped for you, tell me in the comments. You're not alone. You never were.